So I want you to imagine, for just a second, standing in front of tens of thousands of people.
Right.
And they are just absolutely desperate for your advice on how to live.
The pressure there is immense.
Huge. You're the architect, right? You literally wrote the blueprint on finding life's purpose. Millions of people look to you. But while you're standing on that stage, like projecting all this certainty, your own body is physically attacking you from the inside out.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Like becoming violently allergic to the very adrenaline that is keeping you upright.
It's terrifying to even picture.
Right. So, welcome to the deep dive. Today we're digging into the life of Rick Warren. And, we really want to unpack what happens when the ultimate architect of purpose just, loses control of his own structure.
Yeah, I mean, it's just this profound paradox, right? Because we're talking about a leader who spent decades teaching millions of people how to build, a meaningful, predictable, stable life.
Exactly, the ultimate stability guy.
But then his most powerful legacy was ultimately forged in a space where all his blueprints failed. Like he was forced into near total silence by circumstances he just couldn't change.
So what does this all mean? Like, how does someone go from being the voice of a generation to basically stepping away from the microphone entirely?
Well, to understand how he navigated that collapse, I think we have to understand how he built things in the first place.
Right, because he came from a pretty modest background in California, didn't he? How does that even translate into a global movement?
You really have to look at the environment his parents created. He was born Richard Dwayne Warren in San Jose, but he grew up in Ukiah.
Okay.
And his father, Jimmy, was a Baptist pastor.
Yeah.
And this is his day job was as a working carpenter.
Wait, really? A pastor and a carpenter?
Yeah. And meanwhile, his mother, Dot, was a librarian.
Oh, man. That is an incredible collision of worlds. Like, you've got this intense physical reality of building things with your bare hands, right? Paired with a person whose entire life revolves around organizing knowledge and ideas.
Right. And those two forces completely shaped his brain. Faith, for him, it wasn't some, abstract theological concept delivered from a lofty pulpit.
Because of carpentry.
Exactly. Because of his dad, spirituality was grounded in sweat and calluses. It was something you constructed step by step.
That makes a lot of sense.
And then
big leap, right? Because he decides to take all these tools and actually start building. But, he doesn't inherit a massive church. How did he actually get started?
So in 1980, he and his wife, Kay, they moved to Orange County, California.
Yeah.
And they arrived with absolutely zero congregation. Like no building, no funding, and no established following.
Wait, hold on. Moving to a new city to start a community organization with no building and no people?
Yeah, literally starting from scratch.
That sounds like a modern tech startup operating out of a Silicon Valley garage.
It really does.
Oh, they are completely agile.
Others to endure suffering with faith, this became a deeply personal test. Simple tasks that once felt natural now required careful planning. Public appearances became unpredictable. Leadership responsibilities grew heavier as his physical limits became more apparent. Yet, despite the worsening condition, he continued to carry his responsibilities quietly, without drawing attention to his struggle. Eventually, the weight of his health challenges began forcing difficult conversations about his future. The idea of stepping back from the role he had held for so long became unavoidable. After more than 4 decades of leadership at Saddleback Church, Rick Warren made the difficult decision to step down as senior pastor in 2021. The announcement shocked many, marking the end of an era that had shaped modern evangelical leadership. But even in stepping away, his story was far from over. What appeared to be an ending was actually the beginning of a new and unexpected chapter, one where faith would be tested not through leadership, but through limitation, endurance, and personal transformation. And what came next would reveal a different side of his journey that few had ever seen before.
A couple hundred people in a gym sounds quaint. Remember this year, have you ever felt like you had to hide a mental health struggle because it didn't fit the, positive vibe of your community? You know exactly how suffocating that stigma is.
It's isolating.
So how did he handle it? Did he try to wrap it up in a neat theological bow for the public?
He did the exact opposite, actually.
Really?
Yeah. He completely refused to offer a sanitized roadmap out of the pain. He openly admitted that some questions simply do not have answers on this side of eternity.
Wow.
Instead of using his massive platform to project polished victory, he and Kay used it to model raw, agonizing vulnerability.
That is brave.
It was. They launched massive mental health awareness initiatives designed specifically to dismantle that toxic stigma within the church.
So they took the tragedy and tried to change the culture.
Yes. They publicly proved that deep faith and severe mental health struggles can and do exist in the exact same person.
That is a massive paradigm shift for that community. He basically transitioned from being the guy who gives you a 40-day plan to fix your life to the guy sitting next to you in the dark when the plan completely disintegrates.
Beautifully said. He began teaching people how to sit with unanswerable pain.
Yeah.
But carrying that level of emotional trauma while still acting as the focal point
major
for global
turning
movement.
point. What once
It requires
began
a
in
physical
borrowed
toll.
space had now become a structured, established
And the
church
endurance required
with
after
thousands
2013
attending
eventually
weekly services.
manifested
The
in a
growth
harrowing
reflected
physical
something
collapse.
deeper than
See,
numbers.
this is the part of his story
It
that
showed
really strips
that a
away the
simple,
final illusion of
purpose-driven
human
message
control.
could
What
resonate
actually
on a
happened to
massive
his body?
scale.
Well, it
Rick later
started as
expanded
minor
this
physical
vision through his
disruptions.
writings. His
Things
book,
that you can
The
easily
Purpose-Driven
dismiss as
Church,
exhaustion
introduced
or
a
grief.
structured framework for building healthy congregations centered on worship, fellowship, discipleship, ministry, and mission. It quickly became a guide for church leaders worldwide. But the real global breakthrough came in 2002 with The Purpose-Driven Life, a book that reached far beyond church walls and into homes, workplaces, and even public institutions. What started as a small gathering in a borrowed theater had now become a worldwide movement influencing millions. But as Saddleback Church continued to grow, so did the responsibility, pressure, and expectations placed on Rick Warren. And behind the success story, a different kind of weight was slowly building, one that would soon test everything he had built. How Rick Warren's message reached the entire world. As Saddleback Church continued expanding, Rick Warren's influence began reaching far beyond the walls of any single congregation. His teachings were no longer just heard in church services, they were being read, studied, and shared across different countries, cultures, and even professional spaces. What started as a local ministry was now evolving into a global voice centered on one idea: purpose. In 1995, he published The Purpose-Driven Church, a book that introduced a structured approach to building healthy and sustainable congregations. It focused on 5 key areas: worship, fellowship, discipleship, ministry, and mission. The message was simple but powerful, and it quickly became a guide for church leaders around the world who were searching for clarity in how to grow and lead their communities. But the true turning point came in 2002 with the release of The Purpose-Driven Life. Unlike traditional religious texts, it was written in a way that felt personal and accessible, designed as a 40-day journey for anyone searching for meaning. It didn't just speak to believers, it reached people struggling with identity, direction, and emotional uncertainty. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Millions of copies were sold within a short period, and eventually, the book would go on to sell over 50 million copies worldwide. It was translated into dozens of languages and became one of the most widely distributed Christian books in modern history. Its message crossed boundaries that most religious works never reached. The influence didn't stop at everyday readers. Public figures, athletes, and world leaders also referenced its teachings. Olympic swimmer Michael Phelps shared how the book helped him during personal struggles. Even political figures like George W. Bush and Barack Obama acknowledged its impact in public discussions. The idea of living with purpose had moved far beyond religion. It had entered mainstream culture. As his global reach expanded, Rick Warren also became known for his personal financial decisions. He publicly stated that he donated a large portion of his income to charitable causes and even returned earnings accumulated over decades. He and his wife, Kay, chose to continue living in the same modest home they had owned for years, reinforcing a message of simplicity and stewardship that contrasted with many other high-profile religious leaders. Saddleback Church itself transformed into a global network with multiple campuses and international outreach programs. Weekly attendance grew into the tens of thousands, and online services reached audiences across continents. What had once been a small gathering in a borrowed theater was now a worldwide movement, shaping conversations about.
When you transition from a local pastor to a global icon, you become an institution. Millions of people are projecting their need for certainty right onto you.
Right.
You're expected to embody resilience and wisdom and victory. There's very little margin left for personal faltering.
Because if the architect crumbles, people fear the whole philosophy might be flawed.
Exactly.
Which makes the events of 2013 so devastating.
Yeah.
Just when he was globally recognized as the man with all the answers, a tragedy struck that completely defied all of his frameworks.
Right. On April 5, 2013, Rick and Kay's youngest son, Mathew, took his own life at the age of 27.
Let's just sit with that for a second. That is unimaginably painful. And this wasn't a sudden out-of-the-blue event.
Took his own life at the age of 27.
Let's just sit with that for a second. That is unimaginably painful. And this wasn't a sudden out-of-the-blue event, was it? Mathew had been fighting a very long battle.
A lifelong battle, yeah. Mathew had suffered from severe clinical depression and mental illness basically since childhood.
Okay.
And it is so crucial to understand that his passing happened despite having access to world-class medical treatment, decades of counseling, and immense spiritual support.
They tried everything.
Everything. They explored every possible avenue to save him.
I look at this like a catastrophic structural stress test. You know, when engineers want to know the absolute limit of a material, they apply massive, unrelenting force until it snaps.
Right.
What happens to the ultimate purpose guy when a tragedy occurs that has absolutely no neat, purpose-driven explanation? You can't just slap a 5-pillar framework onto the loss of a child. The blueprint fails.
The blueprint completely shatters. And the global community was watching very closely to see how Warren would respond.
Because of his platform.
Yes, because for a long time, in many faith communities, there was this deeply toxic, unspoken stigma surrounding mental illness.
Oh, absolutely. The assumption was often that depression was like a spiritual failing, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That if you just prayed harder, global mentoring.
Mentoring others.
Yeah, he began working with organizations like the Finishing the Task Coalition, basically pouring his remaining focus into equipping the next generation of leaders, rather than having to be the leader himself.
The paradox here is just, it's breathtaking.
It is.
You look at the arc of this man's life. He is famous for massive, unprecedented architectural growth. He built a megachurch out of a borrowed high school theater. He created a 50 million copy global movement.
Wrote the definitive guides on how to achieve purpose-driven success.
Exactly. And yet, his most enduring, meaningful legacy might actually be found in limitation.
His core message underwent a fundamental transformation. In his later years, he stopped emphasizing achievement, expansion, and success.
Right.
He began teaching that suffering is not a sign of weakness. It's not a lack of faith. It is the most deeply shared human experience we have.
That's a huge shift from the early days.
It is. He used his own physical and emotional breakdown to demonstrate how to hold on to your faith when the outcomes are entirely unclear.
When there's no neat 40-day fix.
Exactly. When the pain simply does not go away and when your own body becomes a cage.
Man, we have covered incredible ground today. We started with a carpenter's son hauling chairs into a school gym for 200 people.
Yep.
We watched that pragmatic foundation scale into a global phenomenon that reached the highest levels of cultural influence. We explored the devastating, unsolvable grief of losing a child to a silent illness.
Such a tragic turn.
And finally, we looked at a physical collapse that forced a man defined by constant action to discover the power of stillness. Yeah. The final chapter of Rick Warren's life isn't defined by the massive structures he built when he had total control. It is defined by how he endured when all those structures fell apart.
Which forces a complete redefinition of a successful life, doesn't it?
Completely.
It separates your purpose from your productivity. It shows that true leadership isn't about maintaining some perfect facade. It's about having the courage to show people how to carry the things they cannot fix.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you to take away today. We started this deep dive talking about blueprints, right? The human desire for a perfect plan, for predictability, for total control over the skyscraper of your own life.
Right.
But if a man who reached the absolute pinnacle of global success, influence, and purpose ultimately found his deepest strength in losing control and simply enduring the
End of an era. But for Rick, it was not a withdrawal from purpose. It was a shift into a different kind of calling. Even after stepping away from weekly preaching, his work did not stop. Instead, his focus expanded into global mentoring, leadership training, and initiatives designed to equip the next generation of pastors and church leaders. Through efforts like the Finishing the Task Coalition, his influence continued reaching churches across different countries, helping expand ministry work and strengthen leadership structures worldwide. At the same time, the pain from earlier chapters of his life never fully disappeared. The loss of his son, Mathew, remained a defining wound, but it also became a driving force behind his advocacy for mental health awareness. Together with Kay Warren, he helped support programs that encouraged open conversations about emotional struggles, breaking long-standing stigma inside faith communities. Their message was simple but powerful. Faith and mental health can coexist.